Hello, my friend. Come on in. Take a seat right here on the potting bench. The kettle just boiled, and I've poured you a warm cup of chamomile tea. It is a beautifully crisp morning here in the garden. The dew is still clinging to the scalloped edges of the lady's mantle, catching the early sunlight like tiny, perfect diamonds. If you look closely at my hands, you'll see the telltale signs of a gardener. Soil permanently settled into the creases of my palms, a little dirt tucked beneath the fingernails. I was out early today, just listening to the sleepy hum of the bumblebees waking up among the coneflowers. There is nowhere else I'd rather be. But today, we're going to talk about a chore that usually doesn't feel very peaceful. If you were to ask 100 gardeners what their absolute least favourite garden chore is, 99 of them would likely say weeding. And honestly, the one who doesn't is probably just being polite. Weeding is the universal tax we pay for the privilege of tending a garden. It can be back-breaking, it is terribly repetitive, and it is deeply frustrating. You know the exact feeling. You spend your entire Saturday on your hands and knees, carefully extracting taproots until your back aches. Then, you walk outside on Wednesday morning with your coffee, only to find a fresh crop of crabgrass and bindweed mocking your efforts. It can make you want to throw your trowel into the woods and give up entirely. For decades, the horticultural industry has sold us two primary solutions to this endless problem: harsh chemical herbicides and vast, endless oceans of wood mulch. The former is heartbreaking. Chemicals damage our delicate soil microbiome, pose terrible risks to our beloved pollinators, and introduce toxins into our immediate, living environment. The latter, wood mulch, while organic, requires heavy, yearly reapplication. It costs a small fortune over time, and ultimately, it breaks down into a rich, loose compost. That broken-down mulch acts as a perfect, welcoming nursery for wind-blown weed seeds to land and sprout. But I want you to take a deep breath, because there is a better way. It doesn't involve battling nature, it involves outsmarting it. By the end of our time together today, you will know exactly how to build what I call the weed-proof border. We are going to completely eliminate the need for harsh chemicals, and we are going to say goodbye to the endless cycle of pulling weeds on your weekends. The core philosophy of a truly low-maintenance, weed-free garden comes down to one simple, undeniable ecological rule. Nature abhors a vacuum. Think about it. Bare soil is a wound on the earth. In nature, when soil is exposed by a fallen tree or a landslide, pioneer plants rush in to cover it, stabilize the soil, and prevent erosion. We call these pioneer plants weeds. These pioneer plants are incredibly fast-growing, opportunistic, and relentless because their evolutionary job is to cover bare ground as quickly as possible to heal the earth. Therefore, the secret to weed prevention is incredibly simple, though it requires a shift in how we think. Do not leave any bare soil. By adopting a brilliant 3-layer system, cardboard mulching as the base, dense matrix planting as the structure, and living ground covers as the armour, you can create a border that smothers existing weeds and blocks new ones from ever finding a place to land. Let's take a sip of tea and dig into the science behind our enemy. To defeat weeds without chemicals, we must first understand how they operate in the dark, quiet world beneath our feet. Beneath the surface of your garden lies something botanists call the soil seed bank. Over years, decades, and sometimes even centuries, seeds from weeds have fallen to the earth and been gently buried by rain and worms. Many of these seeds can remain dormant for incredible lengths of time. The seeds of the common weed lamb's quarters, for example, can remain viable in the soil for over 40 years, just sleeping. These seeds are waiting patiently for 3 specific things to trigger their awakening: moisture, warmth, and, crucially, a flash of sunlight. Light is the alarm clock that tells the seed the earth above is bare and ready to be conquered. When you go into your garden in the spring with a hoe, a cultivator, or a heavy rototiller to weed and prep your beds, you are churning the earth. While you might slice the tops off existing visible weeds, you are simultaneously bringing thousands of those dormant, sleeping seeds to the surface. You are exposing them to the warm spring sun. You are, quite literally, planting a brand new crop of weeds while trying to kill the old one. This is why the first rule of the weed-proof border is to put down the tiller. We are going to smother the seed bank, not churn it up. The second way weeds conquer your garden is from the sky. Picture a fluffy white dandelion seed head catching a warm summer breeze and floating effortlessly over your fence. Dozens of weeds have evolved aerodynamic seeds designed to travel miles on the wind. If you have a traditional garden bed, where shrubs are spaced 3 feet apart, surrounded by a thick, barren layer of wood mulch, you have inadvertently created the perfect landing pad. The wind drops the seeds, the rain washes them into the decaying wood, and they sprout. Finally, we have the spreaders. These are the perennial weeds that spread via underground runners, creeping silently beneath the soil like pale ribbons. Our 3-layer weed-proof border addresses all 3 of these threats at the exact same time. Let's begin with layer 1, the base. We are going to rely on a beautiful restorative technique known as sheet mulching, or lasagna gardening. Instead of turning the soil and waking up all those sleeping seeds, we are going to use plain, ordinary cardboard to create a physical, completely biodegradable barrier. Plain, brown, corrugated cardboard is essentially just pure carbon. When you lay it directly over the soil, it acts as an eclipse. It immediately plunges the entire soil seed bank into total darkness, ensuring that the thousands of dormant weed seeds underneath never receive that critical flash of sunlight they need to germinate. For the weeds that are already actively growing in the space, the cardboard acts as a heavy, smothering blanket. Plants, as we know, need to photosynthesize to survive. By pinning the weeds down and entirely blocking the sun, the cardboard forces those weeds to exhaust their underground energy reserves, trying to push through the barrier. For most annuals and weak perennials, this is a gentle, quiet death sentence in the dark. And here is the magic of it. As those weeds die, their roots decay in place, naturally adding rich organic matter to the earth and creating hollow channels for rainwater and earthworms to travel through. You are composting right in the ground. Not all cardboard is created equal, however. For a healthy, thriving garden, you must source the right materials. You want to use plain, brown, corrugated cardboard. Shipping boxes, moving boxes, and those massive appliance boxes from the hardware store are absolutely ideal. You want to avoid any glossy, printed, or waxy cardboard, like cereal boxes or heavy electronics packaging. Those contain synthetic coatings that won't break down and can leach unhappy chemicals into your soil. And this is crucial. You must peel off all the plastic packing tape, metal staples, and shipping labels. Plastic tape will remain in your garden soil for centuries. Before we lay down any cardboard, we need to prepare the earth. The beautiful thing about this method is what we aren't going to do. We are not going to till, and we are not going to pull weeds. Instead, we use a technique called chop and drop. If the area you want to turn into a bed is covered in tall grass or weeds, just use a weed whacker or a mower to cut them down as close to the soil as possible. Leave those green clippings exactly where they fall. As they decompose, they will provide a beautiful burst of nitrogen to the soil microbiome beneath our barrier. Once everything is chopped down, take your hose and water the bare soil or the chopped weeds thoroughly. Give it a deep soak. Now comes the most critical step of layer 1, the overlap. As you lay the flattened cardboard boxes down over the wet earth, you must ensure that every single piece overlaps the next by at least 6 to 8 inches. Think of weeds like water. They are relentless, and they will find the smallest, tiniest gap of light to push through. If you simply butt the edges of the boxes together, I promise you, stubborn weeds will shoot straight up through the seams. Lay them down like shingles on a roof. As you lay them, use your hose to soak the cardboard itself. This makes the stiff boxes pliable, allowing them to mold to the contours of the ground and keeps them from blowing away in the wind. Once your wet, perfectly overlapped cardboard base is down, you will immediately cover it with 3 to 4 inches of high-quality, weed-free compost, or a mix of good topsoil and compost. This layer does 2 important things. It holds the cardboard firmly in place as it breaks down, and it provides a rich, welcoming planting medium for your new plants. By the way, if you are dealing with an area that has incredibly aggressive, spreading weeds like Bermuda grass, my pro tip is to apply a double layer of cardboard before adding your compost, just to be absolutely sure we starve out those runners. Now that our cardboard and compost are quietly resting on the earth, it is time for layer 2, the structure. But to do this right, we are going to gently abandon traditional landscaping rules. If you take a walk through any typical suburban neighborhood, you will likely see what we call specimen planting. You'll see a single hydrangea bush sitting all alone here, 3 small hostas huddled over there, and a lone ornamental grass, all separated by vast, dry expanses of bare wood mulch. But in ecology, plants do not grow in isolation. They are social creatures. They grow in dense, interconnected communities. To achieve a weed-proof border, we must utilize something called dense matrix planting. Matrix planting treats the garden bed like a woven tapestry. Instead of spacing plants 3 feet apart, you plant tightly, intentionally layering different types of plants so that their canopies touch, intertwine, and shade out the ground completely. When the leaves of your garden plants form a continuous canopy, they act as a green mulch. The hot summer sun physically cannot penetrate the thick canopy to reach the soil below, meaning wind-blown weed seeds remain in the cool dark and cannot germinate. Furthermore, the thick root systems of your dense plantings occupy all the underground space, leaving absolutely no water or nutrients for invasive weeds to steal. The second layer of our border provides the height, the visual drama, and the deep shade. First, you'll choose your structural shrubs. These are your backbone plants. Imagine a lovely native ninebark with its peeling bark, a gorgeous oak leaf hydrangea, or a winterberry glowing with red fruit in the snow. Around these shrubs, you'll plant your seasonal theme plants, the real showstoppers. Picture tall, proud perennials swaying in the breeze, vibrant purple coneflowers, sunny black-eyed Susans, towering Joe Pye weed covered in swallowtail butterflies, or graceful ornamental grasses like switchgrass that rustle softly when the wind blows. These will form the high ceiling of your garden room. When you are ready to install these larger structural plants into your newly prepared bed, you must do it with care so you don't ruin your barrier. First, use your hands to push aside the 3-inch compost layer until you see the wet cardboard. Take a box cutter or a sharp hori-hori knife and carefully cut an X into the cardboard. Fold back the 4 flaps of the X like you're opening a present and dig your hole into the native soil beneath. Place your shrub or perennial into the hole, backfill it with the native soil, and then, this is the trick, fold those cardboard flaps back snugly against the stem of the plant. Finally, push the compost back around the base. You've just planted right through the shield. So, we have smothered the bottom with cardboard, and we have blocked the middle light with our beautiful structural plants. But here is the reality of gardening. In the first year or two, before your structural plants reach their full, glorious, mature size, there will still be small gaps of bare compost between them. If left alone, wind-blown weed seeds will find those gaps, land in the rich compost, and sprout. To achieve a border that is truly 100% weed-proof, we need layer 3. We need the living armor. Enter the unsung heroes of the low-maintenance garden, the living groundcovers. Groundcovers are low-growing, spreading plants that love to hug the earth. Their entire job is to scramble over the soil, rooting as they go, forming a dense, living carpet that physically catches weed seeds in its leaves and prevents them from ever touching the soil below. Wood mulch is merely a temporary, expensive fix. It looks pristine for a few months, but by year 2, it has turned into topsoil sitting right on top of your weed barrier, ready to host an invasion. A living ground cover, however, is a one-time investment. Once established, it acts as a permanent, self-renewing mulch. It cools the soil on hot August days, retains vital moisture, and starves out the weeds entirely. Choosing the right armor depends heavily on your garden's sunlight. If your border sits in full sun and has well-draining, even slightly dry soil, let me introduce you to creeping thyme. Maxing out at barely 2 inches tall, creeping thyme forms an incredibly dense, fragrant mat. When you brush your hand against it or accidentally step on the edge of the bed, the air fills with that warm, savoury, earthy, herbal scent. It actually thrives in poor, rocky soil and bakes happily in the summer sun. In early summer, it completely bursts into a cloud of tiny pink and purple blooms that the honeybees absolutely adore. Beneath it, it creates a woven root mat that weeds simply cannot penetrate. Another brilliant full-sun option is creeping phlox, a native North American powerhouse. It features lovely needle-like evergreen foliage that stays looking neat and tidy all through the winter. And in spring, it completely disappears beneath a breathtaking, vibrant carpet of neon pink, purple, or crisp white flowers spilling beautifully over the edges of your garden border. And if you have the hottest, driest spot imaginable, a place where the hose barely reaches, low-growing sedums or stonecrop are unbeatable. Their thick, fleshy, succulent leaves overlap tightly like the scales of a little green dragon, holding on to their own water and leaving absolutely zero light access to the soil below. But what if your garden is nestled under the cool, dappled shade of a large oak tree, where the soil stays medium to moist? You have some truly enchanting options there too. One of my absolute favourites is wild ginger. It is a magnificent, deer-resistant native plant for the shade. It produces these large, heart-shaped, velvety leaves that overlap so perfectly they look almost like a layer of deep green lily pads hovering just an inch above the soil. The deep, cool shade created beneath its broad leaves means that weed seeds stand no chance at all. And if you gently brush aside those velvety leaves in early spring, you'll find curious little burgundy flowers hiding right at the damp soil line. For brightening up the dark, quiet corners under your trees, sweet woodruff is a dream. It forms a delicate-looking but surprisingly rugged carpet of whorled, star-shaped leaves, and it produces a galaxy of tiny, starry white flowers in the spring. As the leaves dry in the autumn, they smell faintly of fresh-cut hay and vanilla. Foamflower is another spectacular native alternative to the invasive ivies so often sold at garden centres. It has pretty maple-like leaves, often traced with striking burgundy veins, and it sends up frothy, delicate white flower spikes that look exactly like sea foam suspended in the air. It spreads gently via little runners to form a dense colony that protects the earth beautifully. Finally, if you want a soft, meadow-like look in the shade, without the horrid maintenance of a lawn, Pennsylvania sedge is the answer. It forms swirling, soft, tufted mats of fine grass that gracefully cover the soil. When planting your Layer 3 armour, you want to plant them densely, often 12 to 18 inches apart. I highly recommend buying them as plugs. Plugs are small, deeply rooted seedlings sold in large trays, making them very economical. You plant these little plugs directly into the 3-inch compost layer that sits on top of your cardboard. Because their roots are shallow, they will quickly colonize that top layer of compost, locking it down completely before any weed seeds can invade. Now, my friend, transitioning to a weed-proof border is not an overnight magic trick. We are repairing an ecosystem, and that takes a little patience. Let's talk about the realistic timeline for success. Year 1 is about installation and vigilance. Spring or early fall is the best time to build. You'll lay your cardboard base, add your compost, plant your structural shrubs, and tuck in those ground cover plugs. Because the ground covers are young and their roots are shallow, your main job in Year 1 is watering. You must keep the bed consistently hydrated to help the living mulch spread quickly. It is normal to see a little bare compost between the baby plants, but that is perfectly okay for now. During the first 6 months, your ground covers will not have completely closed the gaps yet. You will likely see some wind-blown weed seeds land in the bare compost and sprout. But here is the joy of this system. Because they are growing in 3 inches of loose, fluffy compost, and because their roots cannot penetrate the tough cardboard barrier beneath them, they have nothing to anchor onto. You can pull them out effortlessly with just 2 fingers. No digging, no hacking. Just spend a peaceful 5 minutes a week walking your new border with your tea, plucking those easy stragglers. By Year 2, the magic truly begins. Below the ground, that cardboard will have mostly decomposed, leaving behind a layer of incredibly rich, worm-worked soil. The deep roots of your structural plants will have pushed safely into the native subsoil, while the dormant weed seeds that were trapped underneath have quietly died of starvation in the dark. Above ground, your living armour will leap forward, stitching together to form a solid, beautiful mat. Your weeding chores will drop by 90%. And by Year 3, you are on autopilot. Your garden has achieved true ecological balance. The living mulch is a solid armour. The structural layer provides dense shade. Weeding is no longer a painful weekend chore. It is just an occasional minor observation while you listen to the birds. Before I let you go, I want to be completely honest with you. While this 3-layer weed-proof border works absolute miracles on 95% of weeds, your dandelions, crabgrass, purslane and chickweed, there are a few super weeds out there. I call them the 5% unbeatables. These include thugs like bindweed, Japanese knotweed, Bermuda grass, and quackgrass. These plants possess such massive, deep, aggressive root systems that a single layer of cardboard will not stop them. They have enough energy stored in their fleshy rhizomes to travel horizontally under the cardboard for several feet until they find the edge. Or they will muster the strength to pierce straight through the wet cardboard like a spear. If your garden bed is already heavily infested with these unbeatables, laying cardboard over them will only slow them down, not stop them. You must exhaust their roots completely before you spend money on beautiful new plants. If you have full sun, you can try solarization, laying clear, UV-stabilized plastic tightly over the damp soil for an entire hot summer. The intense greenhouse effect literally cooks the roots and the top layer of the seed bank. Alternatively, try the double smother. Lay down 3 thick layers of cardboard, overlap them by an extreme 12 inches, and top with heavy wood chips. Wait a full year. If Bermuda grass pokes through, immediately snip it off at the soil line. Do not let it see the sun. Eventually, its massive root system will starve to death. For generations, we have treated gardening as a war. We arm ourselves with sharp hoes, heavy tillers, synthetic weed killers, and endless bags of wood chips, battling back the encroaching wilderness. But the wilderness is immensely patient, and it always wins when we leave a vulnerability. Bare soil is that vulnerability. By shifting our perspective, by gently understanding that weeds are simply nature's brilliant way of healing a wound in the earth, we can change our entire strategy. This 3-layer system doesn't fight nature. It mimics nature's most mature, stable, and beautiful ecosystems, like a quiet forest floor or a dense, humming meadow. When you eliminate the vacuum, you eliminate the weeds. You trade the back-breaking labor of Sunday morning weeding for the profound joy of watching a vibrant, ecologically rich tapestry thrive entirely on its own. You build deep, healthy soil. You support the bees and the butterflies, and most importantly, you take back your precious weekends. Well, my tea has gone completely cold, which means it's time for me to get back out there. I would love to know what beautiful things are growing in your garden right now. Leave me a note below. If you enjoyed our time today, I'd be honoured if you subscribed so we can share more cozy garden chats in the future. Until next time, my friend, happy growing.